Homelander drinks milk while looking at Madeline, who should be dead. Madeline was indeed dead. At that time, Homelander had watched her die just like this. Could it be that the person in front of him was a figment of Homelander's imagination? Because the way he was talking, it really seemed like he was talking to himself. But the strange thing was, not only could Homelander lie on Madeline's lap, he could also hear her speak.
Maybe time to tear out the weed.
As Homelander considered her suggestion, Madeline's mouth suddenly made a strange sound. In the next second, Madeline turned into a man. It turned out that this Madeline was actually Doppelganger in disguise. Whenever he transformed for more than 15 minutes, the pain would become unbearable, and he would revert to his true form. Under Homelander's threat, Doppelganger transformed back into Madeline, but what Doppelganger had said made sense. It was time to clean house. First, there was Starlight, who had refused to kill Huey. Maybe she was a traitor all along. Homelander stopped the elevator and suddenly grabbed Starlight by the throat, digging his fingers into her abdomen, demanding to know why she didn't kill Huey. For the first time, Starlight felt the fear of death. She struggled painfully, saying she hated Huey to the core, but she didn't kill him because she wanted to hand him over to the authorities. She didn't want to play executioner herself. Homelander closely observed Starlight's micro-expressions. From all indications, it seemed Starlight wasn't lying. Homelander didn't press her further, but letting someone off so easily made Homelander uneasy. So he set his sights on A-Train. A-Train clearly couldn't run that day, yet he had lied to Homelander's face. Homelander could tell right away that something was wrong with A-Train's heart. In his current state, A-Train couldn't even make it to the top 20, let alone first place, which would be humiliating for Homelander. Feeling that this wasn't enough, Homelander even arranged a farewell performance for A-Train. This is hard for A-Train to accept. He still wanted to keep the possibility of returning to the Seven, so A-Train went to Ashley and expressed his refusal to perform. Unexpectedly, Ashley was even more adamant. Ashley gave him two choices: either put aside his dignity and perform to get his severance pay, or leave with his dignity and get nothing. A-Train, with no other options, chose the money, and so, A-Train left the Seven, and his position was filled by Shockwave. Next was the one Homelander despised the most, Stormfront. The internet was filled with insults aimed at Homelander, while Stormfront was being praised to the skies. Some even photoshopped Stormfront's face over Homelander's, claiming she should be the leader of the Seven. Furious, Homelander stormed off to find Stormfront, but Stormfront was unfazed and even mocked him, enraging Homelander to the point where he was ready to use his laser eyes. Seeing this, Stormfront quickly told Homelander not to act rashly, explaining that everything she was doing was for his benefit. She argued that having 50 million fans praising you wasn't as valuable as having 5 million haters criticizing you. That way, you could stay trending longer. Homelander thought carefully and realized that Stormfront might have a point. Then Stormfront started to flatter him, saying he was the best among them and worthy of everyone's admiration. This flattery spoke to Homelander's heart, and made him feel as if he were punching cotton. Frustrated, he went to Queen Maeve to vent about his recent grievances. Among the Seven, he had known Queen Maeve the longest and thought she was the only one he could trust, but it was clear that Queen Maeve was deliberately hiding something from him. With tears in his eyes, Homelander asked tentatively,
"Who's Elena?"
Queen Maeve hesitated for a moment and then said it was just a normal friend, but her poor acting couldn't fool Homelander. The thing he hated most was deceit, so Queen Maeve became his next target for revenge. He first exposed on a show that Queen Maeve was a lesbian. Afterward, Queen Maeve tried to explain to Homelander, but he didn't want to hear it. Seeing this, Queen Maeve had no choice but to tell the truth. But Homelander still wasn't going to let her off the hook. He used Elena as leverage to force Queen Maeve to publicly come out as a lesbian in a movie.
"I'm gay."
But after this, Homelander is even more frustrated, and even with Doppelganger's advances he can't get interested. Seeing this, Doppelganger assumed Homelander was tired of Madeline, so he said he could transform into anyone to satisfy him.
By myself.
Homelander remained unmoved, but Doppelganger went to the extreme and actually transformed into Homelander's likeness. Homelander was stunned by his own seductive appearance, and Doppelganger immediately tried to grovel at his feet. Homelander finally lost his patience. One by one, the people around him had been driven away by him, resulting in a series of rebellions. First was Queen Maeve. She knew that the Deep had been making various efforts to rejoin the Seven. Queen Maeve told him that these efforts were futile. but if he could find the black box in the Atlantic Ocean that proved Homelander's crimes, she could get him back on the team. The Deep didn't find the black box but did find a camera wrapped in tape. It was clear this camera contained evidence recorded by the plane crash victims. Then came Starlight's rebellion. She didn't dare return to Vought Tower and arranged to meet Huey in a park, hoping to join them, but opposed this, as every superhero had a tracking chip, and letting Starlight join would expose their location. However, after Huey's persistent insistence, reluctantly agreed to bring Starlight along. They had a purpose for this mission. Since the boys had failed to hand Kenji over to Colonel Grace, she couldn't clear their names, but Grace gave them a new task: to investigate information about the first generation of superhuman, Liberty. Meanwhile, Grace also found the address of Billy's wife, Becca. So Billy and split up. Billy went to rescue Becca, and went to investigate Liberty. Following Grace's directions, they finally reached their destinations. A woman opened the door. Valerie became extremely cautious as soon as she heard it was related to Vought International. Noticed that Valerie must know something. It wasn't until mentioned that his father had been killed by Vought International that they were allowed inside. Valerie told them about her grudge with Liberty. On a rainy night 48 years ago, she and her brother Myron were on their way home when Liberty suddenly stopped their car, accusing them of theft. No matter how much Myron tried to explain, Liberty wouldn't listen. In the end, Liberty beat Myron to death right there. Afterward, it was found that Myron was innocent. Vought International tried to cover it up with a mere $2,000 hush money. Facing the powerful Vought International, her parents and family can only swallow their anger. Watching Valerie panic, Huey can't help but question it. Since Liberty had disappeared after 1979 and was likely dead, why was she still so frightened? Valerie then pulled out a newspaper and revealed that Liberty was still alive. Everyone was stunned to see that Liberty was none other than the rising star, Stormfront. If they calculated her age, she should be over 70 years old. Could she be immortal? To verify this, Starlight sneaked into Stormfront's makeup trailer and found emails related to Sage Grove on her computer. Before Starlight could read the contents, Stormfront returned, pretending she needed to borrow makeup. Starlight tried to leave, but Stormfront wasn't going to let her go easily. She already knew that Starlight was the one who leaked Compound V to the media and intended to report this to Vought International. Seeing that she had been exposed by Stormfront, Starlight decided to come clean. She threatened to reveal Stormfront's secret identity as Liberty. If the public learned that Vought International was using such a superhero, the scandal would be as huge as the Compound V revelation. Seeing no other option, Stormfront let Starlight go. Meanwhile, Billy had quietly arrived at the secret location, fully aware of the dangers but undeterred. Surveillance cameras were everywhere, so Billy hid in a car to wait. Fortunately, Becca saw the open car door and discovered Billy curled up in the back seat, feigning a trip to buy cigarettes. Becca led Billy to a safe place. The couple, reunited after 8 years, were overwhelmed with emotion, their longing melting away in their embrace. Becca was worried that Homelander would find him and kill him. Billy reassured her, reminding her that he had escaped death once before. But he was wrong. The only reason he survived Homelander last time was because Becca had threatened to kill herself in front of Ryan if Homelander harmed Billy, ensuring he would never have his son's love. Billy finally realized how much Becca had done for him, which made him even more determined to escape with her. But there were surveillance cameras everywhere, and the walls were too high for Ryan to escape. They discussed it and realized that every day at 11 a.m., a garbage truck came by. Maybe Ryan could hide in the truck to get out. To avoid suspicion, Billy hid under a bridge overnight, waiting for the escape plan to unfold the next morning. But the next day, Becca didn't bring Ryan. She had seen in Billy's eyes that he didn't really like Ryan and would try to get rid of him. Becca's concerns weren't unfounded. Who could like the child of their enemy? During their argument, Billy said something he would regret for the rest of his life.
He's a freak!
Losing his wife's trust completely, Becca loved him, but she had to leave him. Billy experienced what it truly meant to love and lose. He went to a bar to drown his sorrows, aimlessly beating up tourists to vent his pent-up sadness, which resulted in him being beaten by a group. Afterward, Billy used ice to ease the pain, but ironically, even the ice pack was endorsed by Homelander. Huey called Billy to report on their mission. Billy no longer cared. All his efforts were for reuniting with his wife, and now it was all meaningless. But Billy hangs up and breaks the mobile phone card. He planned to visit his elderly aunt and then disappear for good, but Huey couldn't bear to see him so despondent. He wanted to tell Billy that even without his wife and with no hope for revenge, he still had his brothers. When Billy came home after walking his dog, he found Huey and Im already waiting at his aunt's house. It turned out that Huey had heard the sound of a toy dog over the phone, and Im knew that Billy had left his beloved pet here. So, they decided to take a chance and found the place. However, Billy was already disheartened. Seeing that Im and Huey wouldn't leave, he decided to hide himself. As soon as he got in the car, he saw Black Noir hiding in the shadows through the rearview mirror. Black Noir, the super assassin, was clearly there for him. Billy hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. Saw Billy return and knew something was wrong. He was puzzled as to how Black Noir had tracked them despite changing cars multiple times. Of course Billy knows it's not Im's fault because he gave his middle finger to the CCTV when he went to see his wife last night. But now wasn't the time to discuss who was to blame. They needed to figure out how to stay alive. Driving away was out of the question. Black Noir could outrun their car. Then came up with an idea. Black Noir never acted in crowded places. So, they called in a few fire trucks, claiming a gas leak. The plan worked. Black Noir could only hide on the roof and observe secretly. However, this only bought them a little time. They prepared to set traps and bombs before the fire trucks left. But Billy knew these wouldn't be enough to hurt Black Noir. Since Black Noir was after him, he decided to lure him away to buy time for his friends and aunt to escape. But Huey couldn't just watch Billy go to his death. Everyone on the team had their tragic stories. After Robin's death, he had contemplated suicide, but Billy gave him hope to live. Emerged with a rope, making it clear they would either live together or die together. The only way out was to hide in the dark room of the basement and wait for Black Noir to trigger the 3 traps they had set up beforehand and then wait for an opportunity to act. As night fell, a loud explosion shattered the silence, indicating Black Noir had entered. Everyone stood ready. After the 3 makeshift bombs exploded, there was a brief silence, where they could even hear each other breathe. They thought they could wait for Black Noir to leave, but Billy's dog barked in fear. Billy quickly tried to calm the dog, but it was too late. A stun grenade was thrown in through the vent. Quickly used his shirt to shield himself from the gas. Billy kicked open the door, finding the room wrecked. He told them to leave immediately while he shut the door. This was the only way he could buy them time to escape. Black Noir stood proudly, completely unharmed by the 3 bombs. Billy picked up an iron rod, ready to fight Black Noir to the death. Just as Black Noir approached, the door was kicked open by who started shooting, but the bullets bounced off Black Noir's body. Black Noir threw a knife, instantly incapacitating him. Seeing Black Noir about to kill Billy quickly distracted him. At that moment, Huey rushed in with a gun, but Black Noir blocked the barrel with his hand. Billy struck Black Noir's arm with a crowbar, but Black Noir knocked him to the ground with a backhanded blow. Just as Billy was about to lose consciousness, his dog's frantic barking revived him. Seeing Huey in mortal danger, Billy finally thought of a way to deal with Black Noir. He called out to Black Noir and made a proposition. If he harmed his friends, Billy would reveal Vought International's dirtiest secret to the public. This secret was also Billy's deepest pain. If the public found out that the revered Homelander was a rapist, Vought International's reputation would be ruined. But Black Noir didn't understand what Billy was saying and reached out to strangle him. As Billy was about to suffocate, a phone call interrupted Black Noir's actions. It turned out Billy wasn't speaking to Black Noir but to the hidden camera on him. He knew Black Noir had a special status in the Seven and took orders directly from CEO Stan. Stan told Billy that if he kept the secret, they would be spared this time. They narrowly escaped death. After this ordeal, Billy realized he couldn't escape the vortex because he was its core. Before leaving, he left a toy dog for his beloved pet. Billy decided to no longer wallow in despair and vowed to take down Vought International and Homelander with his brothers. Homelander, with red lasers shooting from his eyes, instantly killed an innocent civilian. Not only did he show disdain, but he also gave a thumbs up to the victim's family, then flew off into the sky, disappearing into the clouds in an instant, leaving only the grieving family behind. Someone posted the video online, but Homelander showed no remorse and even mocked the situation, but he didn't realize that his comeuppance was imminent. Due to the video going viral online, Homelander's public approval rating plummeted by 12 points, prompting countless civilians to gather in protest against his brutal actions. This undoubtedly hit Homelander's sore spot. Ashley suggested that he publicly apologize. Apologize? What a joke! He was Homelander, and his pride would never allow him to back down. He decided to personally confront and disperse the civilians. As the number of protesters grew, the organizer gave an impassioned speech, which was met with thunderous applause. Homelander descended from the sky, and the scene instantly fell silent. The organizer, terrified, handed the microphone to Homelander. Homelander then began a self-righteous speech, claiming that he only killed terrorists and that the civilian casualties were merely collateral damage of war, something that happens and shouldn't be sensationalized. This was immediately challenged by the crowd, who protested, became more and more agitated and even gave Homelander the middle finger. This infuriated Homelander. His eyes glowed red and released lasers, instantly killing the lead protester. But he didn't stop there. He turned his wrath on all the protesting civilians, unleashing a frenzied massacre. Homelander finally revealed his most evil nature, and in no time, the place was filled with corpses. But in a mere blink of an eye, everyone reappeared. It turned out that Homelander had only imagined doing it. He ultimately suppressed his urge. Realizing he couldn't argue with the crowd, he left angrily. Watching the live broadcast, Ashley finally breathed a sigh of relief, unknowingly losing another strand of hair. But if Homelander was angry and went on a killing spree, she could have lost her head. But who could have thought that the invulnerable Homelander would be so wounded by public condemnation? Homelander stares at the video and goes into an impotent rage, and after venting he thinks of someone who might be able to help him turn things around. So, he knocked on Stormfront's door. Stormfront had never seen such a polite Homelander and deliberately made him wait a bit before letting him in. Upon learning his intention, Stormfront immediately hired internet trolls to tackle the issue, claiming the video was doctored. For Stormfront, gaining a powerful ally by boosting Homelander's approval rating was a win-win situation. Thanks to Stormfront's efforts, Homelander's approval rating surged by 5 points. Delighted, Homelander wanted to show his gratitude to Stormfront, and then they fought. Neither wanted to yield, both striding to dominate. Stormfront shoved Homelander away with a powerful push. Homelander has never been so humiliated that he considers killing her with his laser eyes. But then he remembered that Stormfront had helped him, and it wouldn't be right to repay kindness with cruelty. Unexpectedly, Stormfront didn't fear him but instead taunted him to look at her, to use his laser eyes on her. Homelander had never received such a brazen request and hesitantly used his laser eyes. But he couldn't penetrate Stormfront. Intrigued, Homelander increased the intensity slightly, but Stormfront only appeared to enjoy it. When Homelander stopped, Stormfront was dissatisfied. Seeing this, Homelander, not to be outdone, unleashed his full power. You should know that this laser would turn an ordinary person to dust with just a touch. Yet Stormfront could still laugh, showcasing her incredible resilience. They finally saw eye to eye, and their ensuing battle was even more intense, eventually taking to the skies. This fight completely won Homelander over. He became utterly devoted to Stormfront, even preparing little surprises for her now and then. Homelander eagerly invited Stormfront to his RV, but Stormfront declined, citing a meeting as her reason. When Homelander pouted, Stormfront reassured him like a child, saying she'd be back in 20 minutes and then she'd accept any surprise he had. Clearly, Homelander was convinced by this excuse and returned to his RV to wait patiently. However, as the minutes ticked by, his patience began to wear thin, so his RV ended up looking like this. Homelander despised being deceived the most. He had asked at the company and found out that Stormfront didn't have a meeting at all. He had been waiting for Stormfront to come clean, but she didn't. When Stormfront returned to her apartment, she found Homelander already there waiting for her. After so many betrayals, Homelander's tough exterior hid a fragile heart. Seeing Homelander's hurt expression, Stormfront decided to confess everything. She pulls out a stack of photographs, the first of which shows Stormfront with an elderly woman who Homelander assumes is Stormfront's grandmother. I didn't realize Stormfront said it was her daughter, who died of Alzheimer's 3 years ago. The following photo shocked Homelander even more. Stormfront was born in Berlin in 1919. During World War II, she met Heinrich Himmler and Joseph Goebbels, and later married Vought International's founder, Friedrich Vought. Friedrich was an extreme Nazi, dedicated to creating an army of superhumans using Compound V. Stormfront was the first successful test subject. After Friedrich's death, Stormfront continued his legacy. She had made significant progress and believed reclaiming the Third Reich's cultural dominance was imminent but needed someone to lead the superhumans. Until she met Homelander, he was the perfect leader for the army. This time, Homelander saw sincerity in Stormfront's eyes. He accepted her past and publicly announced their relationship. The news hit Billy like a thunderbolt. One Homelander was already difficult enough to deal with, and now he had a powerful ally. The scales of victory were tipping in favor of Vought International. Just when they were at their wits' end, Starlight's arrival offered them a glimmer of hope. She discovered on Stormfront's computer that Vought International had been secretly funding a psychiatric hospital called Sage Grove Center. which undoubtedly harbored some unspeakable secrets. But Billy didn't trust Starlight. He believed she was a spy sent by Vought International unless she could remove the tracking chip from her body. However, cutting through Starlight's skin was no easy task. This was where Frenchie came in. He took out a drill and aimed it at Starlight's neck. The sound of metal against flesh rang out, and it took 2 minutes to finally cut through Starlight's skin. Frenchie used tweezers to search inside and eventually extracted the chip. With that, the entire team of the boys assembled, targeting Sage Grove Center. The patients in this psychiatric hospital were not mentally ill but rather abnormal normal people, because they were all superhumans. Some could teleport, some could spit acid, some possessed immense strength. There was even one who could use a sausage as a weapon. Despite the danger, these ordinary people were planning to storm this treacherous place, with their first mission being to take over the surveillance room. Frenchie disguised himself as a patient, while and Kimiko posed as medical staff. Used the excuse of a patient attempting suicide by swallowing their tongue to lure the guard to open the door. Frenchie immediately shot the guard with 2 tranquilizer darts, successfully subduing him. Through the surveillance cameras, they saw not only the superhumans with various abilities but also Stormfront in a room, seemingly training them in their superpowers. One patient, using refusal to train as leverage, hoped to see his sister. Stormfront agrees with a smile on her face, but secretly gives a wink to the caretaker, who understands. Thinks the caretaker looks familiar, but can't remember. It wasn't until the caretaker pulled out a lighter and spewed flames from his palm, burning the patient to death, that realized who he was. He was Lamplighter, the one who burned Grace's grandson to death. Frenchie, harboring deep resentment towards Lamplighter, drew his gun to settle the score. Advised him not to be impulsive. It was doubtful whether he could kill Lamplighter, but it would definitely ruin the mission. Fortunately, Frenchie understood the importance of the mission. They moved quickly to hide the security footage under hospital beds. At this moment, received a message from Huey saying that Stormfront had left, urging them to leave immediately after securing the data. However, just as they were preparing to evacuate, they ran into Lamplighter. Despite Frenchie's attempts to stay calm, his murderous intent was evident in his eyes. Both sides realized their identities were exposed as they locked eyes. Lamplighter immediately pulled out his lighter, and Frenchie dodged just before Lamplighter could unleash his flames. They were at a standoff, but their melee burned open the door of a nearby ward and a woman stepped out. From Lamplighter's expression, it was clear that Cindy posed a far greater threat than Frenchie's gun. He tries to calm Cindy down with her preferences. Cindy's mood was just starting to stabilize when a brainless guard rushed out from behind. Cindy extended her hand and squeezed forcefully, crushing the guard instantly. The sight left everyone stunned, and they fled in panic. Instead of immediately pursuing, Cindy spread her arms and squeezed both hands, causing all the doors of the surrounding patient rooms to burst open. Releasing so many monsters at once was no joke. Lamplighter rushed into the surveillance room, intending to stop Kimiko, but tackled him aside, and they all managed to get inside. However, the one outside wasn't so lucky and was instantly turned into a puddle of goo. At this moment, the whole hospital is in a mess, and none of the carers outside have been spared. Seeing Lamplighter and Frenchie still facing off, tried to reason with them, saying that neither could survive alone and that teaming up might offer a slim chance of survival. I didn't realize that Lamplighter just wouldn't bow down. Who would have expected that just as he spoke, the door was suddenly burst open by acid vomit patient. Lamplighter was knocked down by the man, and a wave of acid spewed towards him. Seeing that he missed his target, acid vomit patient began to prepare for a second attack, but Kimiko, quick as a flash, pulled the man down and kicked him hard in the stomach. Acid sprayed from the man's mouth, but it splashed back onto himself, barely escaping death. Lamplighter finally agreed to cooperate. However, they weren't the only ones in trouble. Those keeping watch outside also noticed the hospital's commotion. Billy, unable to contact them, was growing increasingly anxious when he suddenly noticed a patient silently appear in front of him. Billy knew that anyone coming out from inside wasn't to be trifled with. Just as he was about to say a few comforting words, the person emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse that instantly knocked everyone to the ground. The van flipped several times before coming to a stop. And remember, Huey was still inside the van. 3 gunshots rang out, all hitting the patient's heart, and he fell dead. Billy hurried to check on Huey and found a piece of metal deeply embedded in Huey's abdomen. Starlight wanted to use her powers to stop Huey's bleeding but discovered that the van's battery had been destroyed by the electromagnetic pulse. In a fit of frustration, Billy angrily cursed at Starlight, shouting that her powers were useless in critical moments. But there was no time for blame. They quickly lifted Huey and searched for help. Starlight flagged down a car. Billy claimed to be from the FBI and tried to requisition the car, but his accent made the driver suspicious, and he refused to hand over his vehicle. Seeing this, Billy put Huey down and reached for his gun, but the driver was quicker on the draw. Realizing that Huey might die if this standoff continued, Starlight swiftly used her powers to blast the driver away with electricity. Worried she might have hit him too hard, Starlight rushed to check on the driver's condition, but it was too late to regret. She quickly used her powers to cauterize Huey's wound to stop the bleeding. They then drove off to the hospital immediately. Huey's fate was uncertain, and Frenchie's situation wasn't much better. The hallway was littered with brainless corpses as Lamplighter led them to the pharmacy. Seeing the room full of drugs, Frenchie was suddenly energized. With his skills, making sedative grenades capable of subduing these superhumans was no problem at all. He began working furiously, and just as he finished, a strange noise came from outside, putting them on edge. A tentacle broke through the window and wrapped around him's neck. Kimiko rushed out to investigate. After a dull thud, the tentacle finally released and from the mark on the man's head, it was clear the blow had been heavy. The tentacle slowly retracted into the man's pants. Well, perhaps it wasn't a tentacle after all. Felt utterly humiliated, but Frenchie consoled him, saying not to be so old-fashioned. They prepared to leave, only to find Cindy blocking the exit. She had noticed them. This was no time to panic. Don't forget they still had Frenchie's sedative grenades. However, with a slight clench of Cindy's fist, the sedative grenades instantly became duds. As Cindy was about to kill them, a sudden surge of electricity hit her. It was Stormfront returning. Under the terrifying voltage, Cindy collapsed.
Lamplighter!
Pleaded with Lamplighter not to go out, but Lamplighter ignored him and walked straight ahead. Stormfront loudly demanded to know what was going on. If Lamplighter tells the truth, their lives will be on the line. To everyone's surprise, Lamplighter covered for them, lying that it was a doctor's mistake with the anesthetics. Hearing this, Stormfront had no choice but to turn and leave. They had narrowly escaped a dire situation, but why didn't Lamplighter betray them? It turned out that when he was ordered to burn Grace's house, he didn't know there were children inside. He had lived with the guilt for years. Lamplighter knew Frenchie had been watching him secretly and demanded to know why Frenchie hadn't stopped him back then. Frenchie had his own reasons. That night, he received a call saying his friend was in critical condition. Torn between the mission and friendship, he assumed Lamplighter would stay at the nightclub longer. He risked returning to save his friends, but he never anticipated the tragedy that would unfold within half an hour. Both had lived with their guilt for years, and speaking about it now felt like a burden lifted. After escaping, they immediately reported the situation to Billy. Huey was now out of immediate danger as well. At this point, Colonel Grace arrived in a hurry, pulling out a gun to avenge her grandson. Lamplighter, instead of showing fear, urged Grace to shoot, as death would be a relief for him. Frenchie persuaded Grace to reconsider, suggesting they use Lamplighter's guilt to expose Vought International's conspiracy rather than letting him die easily. It was known that Vought International was conducting live experiments on adults, and Lamplighter could serve as a witness. Calming down, Grace immediately began preparing for a hearing. How terrifying is Black Noir, the superhero known for his assassinations? Just look at this woman. The moment her eyes turned to terror, her life was frozen forever. Her blood splattered into the cup she held, and as she fell, the cup appeared in Black Noir's hand. Black Noir gently placed the cup on the ground to avoid alerting others. Looking at these two men, in the brief moment they turned their heads. One of them had his throat slit. He didn't even have time to make a sound. The other one had an even worse fate. Black Noir plunged his hands into the man's mouth, turning him into a human alligator in an instant. But Black Noir's terror didn't stop there. The man let out an angry roar as his entire body began to glow, and the entire attic was blown to smithereens. But when the man finally managed to lift his head, he saw that Black Noir hadn't moved an inch. The powerful explosion had merely scorched through his armor. The man's expression was forever frozen in that moment. Who could have guessed that such a terrifying figure like Black Noir also had a childlike heart? The combination of cold-bloodedness and innocence in Black Noir was surprisingly harmonious. On this day, Black Noir received a mission to capture the defector Starlight. At that moment, Starlight was leisurely having coffee with her mother, Donna. When Donna mentioned that they should leave and had called in for a long leave of absence from Vought International, Starlight immediately sensed something was wrong. They had likely already been tracked to this location. However, it was too late. 2 tranquilizer bombs crashed through the window, and in an instant, all the customers fell unconscious. As Starlight was momentarily stunned, Black Noir approached her from behind and hit her 3 times with a warning sign. When Starlight regained consciousness, she found herself imprisoned in a secret room. She tried to use her powers by harnessing electrical energy but discovered that the room was only lit by fluorescent lights, clearly designed specifically to contain her. The purpose was naturally to lure the boys into a rescue attempt. Homelander publicly announced that Starlight was a defector and had been captured. With the bait set, the fish would naturally bite. Huey, who has just recovered from his wounds, was so anxious that he immediately contacted his teammates to prepare for the rescue. But Lamplighter tells him that Starlight is probably being held on the 42nd floor of the Watts Tower. The place was fortified with impenetrable walls and 2-meter-thick steel plates that even superhumans could not break through, let alone ordinary people. But Huey was resolute. Unable to contact his teammates, he had to pin his hopes on Lamplighter, now a member of the Seven. After some provocation, Lamplighter was finally persuaded. They entered Vought Tower through a secret entrance to the basement. The critical moment arrived. If Lamplighter's system permissions were still valid, they could use the elevator to access the core area. Otherwise, the elevator doors would open to reveal 2 armed guards. Lamplighter pressed his palm against the door scanner, and the elevator doors successfully opened. They arrived safely on the 42nd floor, only to find it was a meeting room. Lamplighter had no intention of rescuing Starlight. He just wanted to see if his statue was still there. He walked into the meeting room dejectedly, then, without warning, flicked his lighter. Flames engulfed him instantly. Under Huey's stunned gaze, Lamplighter turned into a man of fire. It wasn't because he was weak but because he could no longer bear the torment within. The flames on Lamplighter triggered the smoke alarm, and the fire alarm rang throughout the entire building. This was the same floor where Starlight was held captive. The warning lights flashed continuously, but to Starlight, they were not signals of danger but of hope for escape. Her hands began to glow as she absorbed electrical energy and unleashed a full power blast, causing the heavy iron door to collapse. Once free, Starlight searched frantically for her mother. Meanwhile, Huey was also busy. To escape, he needed Lamplighter's palm print. Although the sprinklers had extinguished the flames on Lamplighter, it appeared he was already dead. With no other options, Huey resorted to desperate measures. He smashed a bottle, stomped on Lamplighter's arm to break it, and then used the broken bottle to sever the attached hand. Huey had just exited the meeting room when Starlight arrived on the 42nd floor, but before she could take a few steps, Black Noir grabbed her and threw her through the wall, sending her crashing back into the meeting room. Starlight hit Black Noir with a wave of light and blasted him against the wall. She was about to escape when she saw the charred body of Lamplighter. In that moment of distraction, Black Noir grabbed her and slammed her into a pillar. He picked up a chunk of concrete and brutally pummeled Starlight, leaving her defenseless. If it weren't for the orders to keep her alive, Starlight would already be dead. Black Noir grabbed her by the leg and threw her, sending her crashing through the pillar. He then yanked her by the hair and smashed her head into the table repeatedly until it shattered. But he didn't stop there. Black Noir strangled Starlight, and just as she was about to lose consciousness, she suddenly caught her breath. Queen Maeve had come to her rescue. Queen Maeve choked Black Noir and pulled off his mask, stuffing a piece of chocolate into his mouth. Wait, chocolate? It turned out the chocolate contained almonds, and Black Noir was allergic to nuts. He reached for his epinephrine injector, but Queen Maeve knocked it away and kicked it aside. Who would have thought that the terrifying Black Noir would be defeated by chocolate? But there was no time to relax. Finding her mother was the priority. Starlight wanted to ask Queen Maeve to go with her, but Queen Maeve shook her head. Obviously she had another purpose. Meanwhile, Huey had used his access card to open a cell door, finding Starlight's mother inside. Just then, Starlight arrived. The mother and daughter were overjoyed to have escaped death. Starlight was deeply moved by Huey's daring rescue, but there was no time for emotions now. They finally returned to Grace's place. But now there was a problem. With Lamplighter dead, what would happen to the hearing the day after tomorrow? Colonel Grace conveyed the bad news to Billy, but Billy assured her not to worry, saying he had it all under control. Billy had anticipated Lamplighter's unreliability and had already contacted Jonah. Jonah knew all about Homelander's past and the dark secrets of Vought International. However, Jonah refused to testify. He wasn't afraid of dying. He feared for his family's safety. Billy knew that too. He didn't have the same moral and legal concerns as Grace. Anything Vought International could do, Billy could do as well. And immediately, Jonah knew this guy would do anything. He didn't have a choice. To prevent any further incidents before the hearing, Frenchie took on the role of observer and bodyguard. His relationship with Kimiko was also rapidly advancing, with Kimiko even creating a sign language just for Frenchie. Although everything seemed to be heading in a positive direction, Vought International wouldn't surrender easily. They had their own new plan. What should a robber do when confronted by Homelander? The answer is to run where there are lots of people. Otherwise, the robber would end up like this one. Of course, there were also ones like this, and ones like this, but the unluckiest one was the next guy, because he encountered not only Homelander but also Stormfront. Stormfront raised her hand and broke his arm. At first, the robber begged them to take him to the hospital, but when Stormfront said they were going to kill him, he immediately pleaded to be taken to jail instead. Homelander pressed his hand on the robber's head while getting cozy with Stormfront. The more excited Homelander was, the more the robber suffered.
Kill me!
Afterward, Stormfront claimed that the robber's death was caused by a super terrorist blowing his head off, bringing her brainwashing rhetoric to the screen. Those with weak wills became her followers, starting to kill indiscriminately. As the situation escalated, it provided Vought International with an opportunity to exploit it. Homelander and Stormfront, posing as a romantic duo, capitalized on the public sphere, proclaiming that the nation needed more superheroes to face future threats. In preparation for the upcoming hearing, during this time, Stormfront saw a baby in the arms of a female supporter and displayed a rare moment of maternal affection. Homelander, though outwardly calm, was overjoyed. He had been looking for a stepmother for his son, and Stormfront seemed perfect. Homelander descended from the sky in front of his son, Ryan, with Stormfront following closely. As a woman who had lived for nearly a century, Stormfront knew how to handle a child, quickly bonding with Ryan. Seeing the timing was right, Homelander planned to take Ryan away that night. Becca desperately tried to keep her son. However, Ryan's entire world had been the cabin and the surrounding few square miles of forest. He knew nothing of the world beyond the walls. When Stormfront lifted him into the sky, Ryan saw the vast world beyond the walls. And no matter what Becca said, he didn't believe her. Homelander flew off with Ryan in his arms. The hearing took place as scheduled. Homelander thought victory was in his grasp, but when Jonah appeared in the hall in a wheelchair, his expression instantly froze. Jonah raised his right hand to take the oath, and just as the chairman of the hearing was about to say a few words, his head exploded. It was the same method used to kill the CIA deputy director, something Huey, watching on TV, knew all too well. The head explosions continued, and Jonah was not spared. The scene turned into chaos. One explosion after another filled the hall with blood. Sadly, Shockwave, the newest member of the Seven, was killed before he could prove himself. Grace quickly pulled the bewildered Congresswoman Victoria to safety, knowing that protecting her was essential to bringing down Vought International. Blood and smoke filled the hall, turning it into a hellish slaughterhouse. The boys' hopes were dashed with each explosion. No one knew who was behind the attacks, but whoever it was had undoubtedly done Vought International a huge favor. Vought International blamed the incident on super terrorists, using it to push for the legalization of Compound V. They signed large contracts with the Department of Defense and immigration agencies at $5 million per dose. Despite this victory, CEO Stan remained on high alert, with Black Noir in a vegetative state, Lamplighter reduced to a pile of ash, and Starlight's defection. The Seven was down to only 2 members. For this reason, Stan went to the Church of the Collective to negotiate, hoping that the Deep could return to the Seven to fill the gap left by Shockwave. The Church's terms were just acceptable, but A-Train still couldn't return to the team. Meanwhile, the boys were in chaos, unable to take down Vought International through legal means. They were left with only extreme options. Frenchie and Imam gathered as many heavy weapons as they could to prepare for a showdown with the superheroes, but Huey disagreed with their approach, arguing that killing them wouldn't solve anything since Vought International could easily create new superheroes. To stop Compound V from reaching the market, they had to continue with the hearing. Starlight pondered and decided to seek out Queen Maeve, hoping she would testify, but Queen Maeve flatly refused. After repeated failed attempts at resistance, she believed any effort now was futile. As Starlight and Huey left, disappointed, A-Train suddenly appeared in their car. Huey, terrified, pulled over and started to run. But how can they outrun the A-Train? The A-Train came to Huey's face in a flash. Oddly, A-Train didn't harm them. Instead, he he handed over a file containing incriminating information about Stormfront's Nazi past. A-Train knew Stormfront would never allow him back in the Seven. Taking her down was crucial for his return, and after all, Huey and Starlight had saved his life, so he decided to do them a favor. This way, their past grudges would be settled. But the good news didn't stop there. Becca, having lost her son, returned to Billy. After explaining the situation, Billy realized this was his chance. An unencumbered Homelander was nearly invincible. But now, with Ryan in the picture, he had a vulnerability. Finding Ryan became the top priority. Seeing the long-separated couple reunite brought smiles to the team's faces. Billy had his own plan. He contacted Stan to negotiate. With Colonel Grace's skills, finding Ryan would be easy, but Vought International would never let go of a natural-born superhuman, so even if they found Ryan, they couldn't return him to Becca. The best option was to hand him over to Stan. This way, Billy could stay with his wife. Stan readily agreed, as Ryan was the leverage he needed to control Homelander. In the end, Stan and Billy reached an agreement. The upcoming battle would center around Ryan. To bond with Ryan, Stormfront took him to a children's amusement park. Ryan was filled with joy and curiosity about all the new experiences. However, as more of Homelander's fans gathered, Ryan became increasingly anxious. Homelander noticed his son's distress and quickly took him away from the crowd, placing him in a secluded cabin. While Homelander was calming Ryan down, Billy, thanks to a tip from Stan, learned of Ryan's location. Seeing Stormfront's file brought them great relief. Handling two superhumans simultaneously wasn't easy, but this information, though not enough to take down Stormfront directly, could at least cause her significant trouble. They immediately sprang into action. Huey was tasked with sending Stormfront's dossier to various media outlets. Billy and him prepared an array of specialized weapons. Frenchie gathered a whole box of speakers. Once everything was ready, Becca grew worried. She still didn't believe that Billy would hand Ryan over to her. She demanded that Billy swear on his brother's soul. Seeing the helpless look in Becca's eyes, Billy's resolve softened.
I swear to you. I swear to you on Lenny's soul.
Soon, Stormfront's scandal was exposed by the media. Once adored by millions, she had now become a public enemy, with even her scandals being turned into nursery rhymes. Vought International, trying to quell public outrage, had no choice but to fire Stormfront. The sudden news sent Stormfront into a rage. Frenchie spotted Stormfront flying rapidly overhead and immediately notified Billy to start the plan. Billy remotely activated the speakers placed in the woods. The speakers emitted ultra-low frequency sound waves, while inaudible to normal humans. These waves were a piercing noise to the sensitive hearing of Homelander and Ryan. Homelander flew out at once to find the source of the noise. After distracting Homelander, Billy and Becca immediately drive to the cabin to take Ryan away. Meanwhile, Homelander found the pile of speakers. After destroying them with his laser eyes, he realized he'd been tricked. Due to Billy's last-minute change of plans, the team Stan had arranged found no sign of Ryan when they stormed the cabin. As they were about to withdraw, an enraged Homelander blocked their exit.
Is my son